Hey folks, check this out. I'm playing my Pokemon SoulSilver for the Nintendo DS, and this kind stranger just offered to take me and my crew's picture. We go into this sweet little photo mode for a moment, and then he drops the picture off in my PC. What a cute memory, and also a neat little way to further utilize these games' overworld walking Pokemon. And hey, that was pretty great. But let's get back to business, cause, you know, Lugia or whatever. I never use this silly little function ever again. I would forgive you if that was your entire experience with the photography feature in HeartGold and SoulSilver. It was certainly the one that I had playing through the game the first time. I talked to Cameron, the photographer, and got my team's picture taken once, maybe even twice. But beyond that, I gave such little thought to the feature going forwards. I barely recognized it even as a fun little novelty. And after those initial tries, I straight up avoided the guy because I had more pressing matters to attend to in-game. And while, yes, there technically isn't anything to be gained mechanically here from engaging with the photography, there is absolutely something incredible and fascinating to behold here that is more than worth the look. Unlike in the recent Scarlet and Violet, where you're given essentially complete control to take a photo whenever and wherever you want, with a number of additional controls and add-ons to play with, HeartGold and SoulSilver's version of the feature depends almost entirely on interacting with other characters, primarily the photographer Cameron, but also a number of the big names and players living across the continent. This strangely puts your ability to capture these memories just about completely in the hands of other characters, and not your own. They control the circumstances of how and where you choose to remember. That by itself is maybe nothing more than just an interesting choice. It is definitely frustrating if you're actually looking to take in-game photos and don't have exact control over the location of the shoot, but maybe there's something to be said for a certain curation that was done by the developers in this case. Perhaps each of these spots were carefully picked to show the player certain views and impose certain perspectives. And so while ultimately some player agency is lost, the sheer volume of opportunities and variety baked into this feature eases some of that irritation. There's a full-on laundry list of places that you can get a photo snapped, but that thought specifically is where the feature goes from that interesting to downright fascinating. As for some reason, there's a world of depth here that starts to unfold once you actually dive in. Because not only are these photography spots only available at specific pre-selected locations around the map, they're further obscured by time sensitivity, with the majority of photo spots only usable on certain days, and some further that are only available at certain times. And why yes, as you might have already guessed, there isn't much guidance for these timetables actually in-game, outside of the usual trial and error the games can ask of you. But it's sort of a weird case, right? Without prior knowledge, it's not something you would really even know to look out for. There's nothing dictating a photo spot would necessarily even exist outside of you happening to show up to it at the right time and place. So it wouldn't look like the usual Pokemon trial and error you could apply to something like missing entries in your Pokédex. And for those reasons, the HeartGold SoulSilver photography kind of looks like a complete mishandling of an otherwise new and fun feature for a set of remakes. You don't even get the tools to let you know that you're missing out, so you could go your whole playthrough without knowing about it. But hey, I want to try and extend some grace in this case, and further to the several other time-sensitive events and facets just like this all over the Johto games. Because from a certain perspective, I think it could be said that they knew exactly what they were doing with stuff like this. In the specific, basic function of these photos, Cameron will be positioned at static points around the map and offer to take a picture of you and your party in the locale that you're currently standing in. Each of these spots have 1 to 3 corresponding days of the week when he will actually be present, and on those days, he'll be in position for the whole 24 hours. He might be at one spot only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but another only on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The big saving grace here though is that these spots are generally in open and frequently traveled areas. So if you make the rounds, play your game every so often throughout the week, and really leave no stone unturned, you're bound to run into him eventually. I imagine that the idea was to make it sort of like interacting with a real-world acquaintance. You both have pretty busy schedules, but as long as you keep going out, it's pretty likely that you'll cross paths again. So the trial and error that you end up running with this, and the whole directive Pokemon was going for with the Johto games, seems that it might very well be the simple act of just living and really existing inside of them day to day. Cameron has an unbelievable encounter table that stretches and dots across the entire continent, with seemingly no rhyme or reason to the days that he's available at certain spots. Upon diving into it, I was originally quite confused and just a touch frustrated by how arbitrary and nonsensical it all seemed. But did I really need to be? More than just the usual in-game novelties, these are photos. memories, even. So maybe it makes sense, the most sense, that these physical memories are experienced and earned by those really living and diving into this world. Furthermore, it's not really a collectathon like everything else, right? What is a picture in Pewter City even worth to me if I've barely spent any time there and the place resultantly has no sentimental value at all? It's definitely fun to snap a quick selfie as a tourist, but this intentional choice by HeartGold and SoulSilver makes me think that maybe the happenstance of the everyday is just as important when it comes to what we choose to remember. I personally happen to visit Olivine City way more frequently, so I'm bound to take a picture there eventually, and I'll probably get one I fondly look back on. That's about as deep as the basic photos get though. While they do adhere to a relatively intricate timetable, the criteria for actually using them is as simple as being there at the right time in the right place. So in actual practice, any individual picture that you might be jonesing for really isn't going to be that bad. And if you absolutely need to take a picture at any given moment, if you're downright jonesing for one, Cameron has a permanent self-operated camera set up outside of his house in Sionwood City. So if the goal is ever to just pose with your team regardless of setting, there's always an option available. All of that is just the basic photography offered by the game though. For those looking to scale the heights of the in-game picture-taking world, there's always the advanced photography, where you, a partner Pokemon, and an NPC of note all group up for a wonderful photo together. I should mention that these categories I'm giving them, advanced and basic, are quite completely made up. By me, in fact. But I think that the distinction speaks for itself on the hoops that have to be jumped through to grab a selfie with the strong majority of these characters. A few shots are a little bit easier, like with the Daycare Man or Dragon Master, who just have the usual criteria of being interacted with on the correct days. Head into the Dragon's Den on Mondays and Thursdays, for instance, and you can grab a quick pic with one of the legends lurking in the Pokemon world. I can only wish I was as cool as this guy. The vast majority, however, reach a point of complexity that makes me wonder if they would ever happen through the natural means I was describing earlier, and are really just prizes for the most dedicated players or those with access to a guide and a knack for side quests. But who's to say, really? All 16 of the gym leaders can be photographed alongside the player, but not only do most of them have specific days of the week, they can also require any number of the following criteria: a specific time period on a specific day, their phone number already in your Pokegear, and in some cases, an even further additional quest, like having a certain Pokemon in your immediate party. Take Lieutenant Surge, for instance, who I would argue is probably one of the most complicated characters to take a photo with for whatever reason. He needs to be interacted with at Moo Moo Farm on Friday or Saturday after you've gotten his phone number and traded a Pikachu with him at the Magnet train station in Saffron City. But to get that stuff, you have to have beaten Blue, dealt with Zapdos, then interacted with Surge at the power plant on any day between the hours of 9 and 11 AM while walking with a Pikachu, and then finally beaten him in a gym leader rematch by calling him on a Friday morning. Does that sound completely ridiculous and entirely made up? Because I should think it does, but that is the straightforward breakdown on how you ultimately get to take a picture with him. Just what the hell? Of course, there were a lot of goodies along the way, but that borderline sounds like one of those early 2000s gaming rumors you would see in a 240p YouTube video or hear from a very deceptive friend on the playground. Yeah, that's right, Noah. I'm still pissed. Why would you lie about Darkrai of all things? But I digress. Surge is again probably the most convoluted criteria out of the entire lot, but there is this big through line here with the phone numbers. Those come with their own additional and often unique criteria. Outside of Price, who will offer you a picture with no other strings attached, the gym leaders all require at least one side quest type criteria in addition to meeting at a specific time during the week. This works pretty well in some cases, like with Blue, who will take a photo every Friday on Cinnabar Island after you've defeated Red. Beating Red is natural and straightforward gameplay progression, and then the Friday is just the typical time of the week requirement like before. And from the criteria we've established thus far, that's pretty fun. I like it a decent amount. This is the exception and not the rule, however, and the vast majority of the other leaders' photos are like the Surge example, and you will need their phone number. And then the phone numbers come with their own set of esoteric criteria to obtain. That's the logical cause for why this system is so complicated. The photos are ultimately a subset of borderline random side quests. Like Bugsy, for example, is definitely way less complicated than Surge, but still features some solid hoops to jump through to get that photo. First, you need to find him in Viridian Forest on a Thursday to get his phone number, and then afterwards, find him in the National Park on a Friday to take the picture. So there's way fewer little requirements along the way, but it's still just sort of odd. It's not hard, or really all that hidden even. It's just so arbitrary, and not at all telegraphed like a mission usually would be. And in the end, most of the gym leaders shake out like this. Who would even think to come up with a side quest like that? And then even further, who would even think to explore it as a player without the usual give and take communication a game usually uses to lead us to things like this? The answer is simple though. Adventurers, that's who. But not those who go on outrageous and daring escapades to explore that which has never been seen or understood by human eyes. No, more so the adventurers of the everyday life. It's those who really explore and search for the world always existing around them. It's those who bother to stop and smell the roses. It's those who find substance in every journey, every sunset. It's perhaps even those who are surrounded by beauty. The Johto games offer this fantastic philosophy that there are adventures and joys, no matter how arbitrary, in every single day as long as you're willing to look. The big breakthrough was always just the in-game clock, allowing for timed events and mechanics, and then further allowing for benefits from playing every day of the week. But that was ultimately leveraged for a system so filled to the brim with random and arbitrary complexities that while any individual piece is going to look silly under a microscope, you're bound to find some of them naturally just by living a regular and invested life in Johto. And what better emblem of that than photography, a physical manifestation of the memories that we made along the way. I'm definitely with you that in some spots here, there might be a level of complexity so high that it betrays that goal of the beautiful everyday, but for the most part, it leans hard and well into one of the most powerful themes that these games communicate. Because remember, this mechanic shouldn't be treated like a collectathon or something that you have to go out of your way for in order to get a complete photo album. It's a memory and a ledger of your journey throughout this world, where it most perfectly reflects the life that you chose to live while inside of it. So the next time you're playing HeartGold or SoulSilver, I implore you, walk these paths, interact with everyone along the way, and if the moment strikes, choose to snap a quick photo along the road. Some of the journeys might be longer and more convoluted than the others, but they could all ultimately be pages in your scrapbook. These games only give you 36 slots to store photos in, and while there are way more opportunities than that along the way, I hope that you play these games in a way where your album is full by the time that you're done. It's all in pursuit of the beautiful everyday and the beautiful heart and philosophy of HeartGold and SoulSilver. That's all I got for you this time, folks. Let me know what you thought down below, and give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. As always, thanks a lot for watching. I'm surrounded by beauty. Droomish, out.